Welcome to the Asian American Forward podcast. I'm your co-host, Katie Simpson. And of course, with me today is my co-host, Don Sun. Hi.
Hi, Katie, and hi, every audience, my friend there. I'm so happy to coming back again with Katie. Katie is an expert on the podcast, and he has a major in journalism and also politics. So it can mitigate my heavy English accent. So we just need to find talk about whatever the subject that we can chat about today. Thank you, Katie.
Oh, thanks. I promised your English is great. This week on the show, we're going to review Tyler Anbinder's 2016 book, City of Dreams. You have read it and you're really excited to share with us. So the book tells the story of, to use the subtitle, the 400-year epic history of immigrant New York. So Don, just give me a little bit of background. Why did you choose this book for our book review this month? And what were you interested in learning?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons I choose this book. This book has been on the shelf for over 4 or 5 years already. And it's in the Silicon Valley Bay Area. I used to host a Chinese radio talk show for over, I think it's 8 years, just continue to do the book review. At that time, the most Chinese audience here, when I talk Chinese about the books of New York top 100 books, and they enjoyed I introduced American politics, American culture to the new immigrant. And this book is almost the last one I try to introduce to the audience, but at that time, I'm too busy. So this book I finished reading, but on the shelf. I never have a chance to go back to talk this book with all the audience. I'm glad it's when we coming back with this particular podcast together, we can choose this book. This book is my favorite book, even it's so long and heavy, but I like to share with everyone here.
I didn't realize that you had a book review podcast or a radio show before.
Yeah, so my dream is just want to help people with a similar background like me. They immigrant to this country and they come in, get a master's degree, get a PhD degree, and they got a job and this case here, and then they stop reading. Nobody going to continue read the books. And my kind of a sense of responsibility and also want to enrich myself. I think it's the book is the best things. People say, Don, you volunteer to do the radio talk show host without any compensation for 8 years. I said, I'm enriching myself by reading books. And I share the books with people. I learned a lot about this country. That's the ways I can continue doing. Same thing like today. We do the podcast. I think it's not only share our experience or thought, but enrich ourselves, because it's every conversation between you and me. I think I can learn a lot from you. When we share the books, we can learn a lot from books too.
Yeah, it's really good that we have this show actually, because I just graduated in May and it's been a struggle to keep reading when someone is not telling me you need to read this by this day. So I'm really excited to talk about this book with you and learn a little bit more about the history of New York. So we will come back after a quick break. New York City is a symbolic representation of America's immigrant history, with the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island both landmarks to immigration in this country. The city of New York is a city of immigrants that's kind of representative of America as a nation of immigrants. And it's still really well known for its neighborhoods and ethnic enclaves. I was doing some research before the show this week, and I found out that there are 9 different Chinatowns alone in New York City. That's not even Chinatowns anywhere else in the US. So Brooklyn, Queens, all of these places have their own Chinatowns. And as of 2012, New York City was home to the largest Chinese ethnic population outside of Asia in the whole world. Of course, Staten Island still has one of the highest populations of ethnic Italians in the US. The Bronx is home to a large Puerto Rican population. And I'm like only scratching the surface here. The list goes on and on of neighborhoods of immigrants in New York City. And so that really only encompasses like immigration since 1900, the beginning of the 20th century. And in this book, it goes back 400 years. So could you, Don, tell me a little bit about like where the book begins and like what were the early patterns of immigration before kind of what's more popularly known about New York City's immigrant history?
Yeah, I can share the feeling when I open the book. It's so thick. It's just like a 700 pages. It's thick, and the English as my second language. When I read this book, I'm scared myself. Say, can I finish from page one to the end? But when you turn the page, the first paragraph is just catch my eye, and then I just keep reading. It's so interesting. I never know it's the first person coming to this country, to New York, is coming from Dutch, the Holland, the people. And the New York name, the city's name used to be called New Amsterdam. So it's not New York until I think it's to the 1660s. And then when British colonial take over the authority of management, and they changed the name to New York. And then from generation to generation, the first from Duchy to England, and from East European Jewish community to the Germany, and then Italian, every like 50 years, and they have a different the immigrant ethnic group coming to this country, but they all settled in the New York City. And I think it's whatever the change, even the political structure is the New York City is reflect the whole world. The people coming here, and the first generation, sometimes they discriminate their own ethnic group, and then the later their next generation they assimilated into this society. It's so interesting. You can see there's a lot of personal stories. I respect the author, the way to present this book. It's 400 years, and you think it looks like when before you read it, you think it's oh my God, 400-year history book. It's not novel. Yeah, it's just an encyclopedia. But when you read, you never feel it's an encyclopedia. It's just like a novel story, and the chapter by chapter, each chapter have their own very unique the element. They tell each immigrant from different country how they assemble here, how they help each other, how they run their business, and how do the connection with their motherland. That's so interesting. That's the keep me from read from page one to the end. And then after you're reading the book, you really got a sense. New York City is not only a city; it represents the entire American spirit, and how tolerant, how the inclusive of this country. So make people love this country more and more. That's what I feel. I think each ethnic group, especially from your family coming from England, this probably is I don't know, it's from Scotland, Irish, or is it just simply England? If you're coming from,
Yeah, we're not really sure. I think he might have been Irish. We just know his like port of origin, so we don't really know very much about what his life was like in England.
yeah, most of the people they coming here, they are kind of be depressed by in their country. They either has no food, homeless, and then is coming here to get some the basic shelter, food, and struggling, and then they got the opportunity from Irish and the Scotland. The people there, they feed their family by the potatoes, right? And then it's when there's a the disease happened, all the potato is gone. So the people
Right,
just
the potato famine. Yeah.
and then the people come here. I just wondering though, is your family is coming for the potatoes or is it coming from a super rich colonial the officials coming here to dominate New York? That's I don't know, but that's the kind of the experience for the Jewish community. They just mostly coming here is because the first World War, and there's the Germans uh, have some Jewish exclusion, and they just run away from the Nazi Germany. That's the kind of a situation from German. And for the Asian people, is that they're coming from Korea, from Vietnam, and that's all becoming war, and then they become refugee here. From mainland China, the people coming here is separate. One wave is people from Hong Kong, and then it's coming from Taiwan, and then it's the last wave is coming from mainland China. I was coming from mainland China, so I know in the past 30 to 40 years, a lot of I think it's a well-educated people. They finish the top tier college in China. They all coming here. We probably like 2 million to 3 million college educated students coming here, get into the graduate school. And but basically, we keep a connection to the motherland so tightly. When I moved here, I was almost 30 years. I barely speak English. So I remember the first time when I walked into the classroom, and the professor called me, says, after class, coming to my office. I was so nervous and came to the office. And then professor said, how much you understand in the classroom when I talk? I said, zero.
How old were you?
I'm when I come here, I'm 27 already. I didn't speak English, but they gave me the scholarship. They me because my academic achievement in China is pretty good, and also I used to work in the World Bank, join the
Oh.
working with the World Bank. The resume is good, and also my reference from this country is very good. They said, "Oh, Dang is the excellent student. Your school is going to be benefited from his admission." So I came here, but it's pretty quick because my major is economics. So mostly it's mathematics, statistics, just do the model. So you just calculate, and pretty easy to get the first semester passed.
So my family story is pretty different. We don't know very much about my mom's family because my mom's dad's dad, so my great grandpa on her side was adopted. So we really have no idea. But Elias, my great grandfather on my or great 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 grandfather on my dad's side, he came through Ellis Island in New York. He didn't stay in New York City. He traveled to the Dakota Territory, which is where my great grandfather grew up. They lived in a sod house and all of that stuff. But many immigrants did stay in New York City. And City of Dreams is kind of the story of those people. And it's really interesting. One of my favorite places to visit in New York is the Tenement Museum. So on the Lower East Side. And it kind of tracks the other side of the story that you're telling. So like the people who did come to the US and stayed in New York, what was their life like? And so what they've done is they've preserved different apartments to look how they did when different families were living there, actual real families. So you can visit an apartment as it would have looked for an Irish family in the 1860s, or a Jewish Lithuanian family in the 1910s, or an Italian family in the 1930s, like within these same few buildings. And I think they are doing virtual tours now because of the pandemic. So if people, maybe we'll link that in our show description this week. If people are interested, you don't actually have to travel to New York because of the magic of technology. But that all of that being said, what have you learned or like what stood out to you about how the immigrants lived once they arrived in New York City?
Uh, the impress the description of New York City and the new immigrant they settle down is called a 5 point the area that you just described. So that area is all people stay there because rent is so cheap, just
In the
$1.
lower on the Lower East Side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is the so cheap. But the book describe what's the most annoyed things is noisy. It's a sound. But the sound is not like today's the modern metropolitan New York, the ambulance chasing the siren, the running, and the hauling people. At that time, is the people's talk, just like a theaters. Before the performance started, people just standing on the street keep talking from morning to the end because the room is so tiny. One room is they put 8 people, 10 people in a room. So people in the daytime, they don't go back to their room. They just go standing on the street and keep talking until midnight. No one can sleep. That's kind of a description. You can see the picture. You can hear the all different language every day, every hour, every minute in your ear. Those kind of descriptions are so interesting. But overall, for this the sick book, I got is pretty. What I take from this book is every immigrant experience is almost identical. I think I'm unique. But when I finish this book, I see, oh my God, the people from Germany, people from Switzerland, people from Italian, from Vietnam, from Korea, they all share the same feeling. And I remember when I first fly to the landed in the LaGuardia airport in the New York, I'm so scared. I standing there in the midnight. I just worry. Oh my God! If my friend don't come in here to pick up, I don't know what this word is. And then when I see one person show up, my friend, I said, "Oh my God! I finally have someone to pick me up." That's kind of experience almost identical for every new immigrant. They they just keep nervous on the flight, and then when you're settled, you try to assimilate yourself into adjust to this society. That's almost identical. But we still keep our culture and the same as the other ethnic group. They try to keep their culture and they eat the same food. I'm still eat a lot of Chinese food too, until today. And the same, and they send money back to home to my parents, to my relatives, and then try whenever they have a chance. I'm going to try immigrate my family, bring my brothers, my sisters coming to this country, and the struggle to apply green card and then turn to the citizenship. That's the every document is that we have to go through. The one thing is I think it pretty funny for my experience is the first time when I learned how to drive, I drive to the from East Coast. I drive to the California.
Oh, that's a
And
big drive.
yeah, and then the police they catch me, stop me. I just heard the siren is behind me because it's a cross country drive. It's going you cannot control the speed. I was stopped. It's the first time, and then
This is the first time you were driving.
No, I drive several times, but it's first time I caught by police.
First time you got pulled over. Okay.
I pulled over, and then the police asked me to roll down the window and just say paper. And it's the paper in this country means that your driver license, your insurance card, right? So I said paper, good. So I'm digging my backpack and I got one white paper. I said, "Hi, the paper. I gave it to you." And then the police are laughing, say, "I want your driver's license and your insurance card. Now white paper." That's I can remember. Later, I know all paper means a document. That's kind of things. Every day, there are a lot of stories that when I try to adjust myself into this country. It's so good. But the problem is that even we love this country, we try to assimilate ourselves into the society. But I think it's we probably for the first generation, we probably never can fully integrate in the society. The only thing is that maybe next generation, my kids, or it's the next generation, it's pretty hard for the first generation to integrate. Even I like politics. Politics is almost the essence of any country or it's any political system or any society. But I still feel I'm still a little bit a margin kind of a person. It's not
Mhm.
fitting because I don't know it's what's song or what's a music, folk song you like, and what's kind of night show you like. Those kind of things that I never have a chance to experience.
Yeah, yeah, there's so many things that you learn just from growing up in a place. I even, um, this is like so small compared to moving from the US to China, but I like moved across the United States when I was in middle school and I just like felt so much culture shock. Like I thought I would never adjust because of course America is also so different like within itself too. I like have lived on the East Coast and the West Coast and even that is like almost an immigrant experience in itself coming from like New York to California for example. Um, so yeah, and I also I think it's really interesting what you said about first generation versus second generation and like what do you notice about your kids or and maybe this was in the book too about your kids that they have a different sense of US culture than you do.
Oh yeah, that's a lot. They are much more. I think I call it simpler, or some people they call the young kids stupid. They try to think it's very very direct. They never say I'm going to calculate something. But for the first generation, they have some self protection. So each event happen or each the things happen, they always try to calculate and use the Chinese way to think. And but for the young kids, they grow up here. The environment is so, especially in the Silicon Valley, it's so diversified. So they can have a much more tolerance for us. Most times, I think this country is the least discriminate country, but may not be agreed with the progressive people. But I personally experience that this country is the best country in the world. They are so different to the new immigrant. Even myself, I feel sometimes I discriminate others, like other ethnic group or other cultures. But when you finish this book, and I think it's my mindset changed a lot. So it's whenever you settle down this country, you feel comfortable, and our responsibility is to try to help new immigrant make sure the culturally sanitary living habit just try to civilize and mix with other cultures, not the harsh or it's a bully other ethnic group. That's the whatever is. I think there's always room for us to grow ourselves to become more human.
Definitely. So, and I have always really enjoyed learning about these different immigrant stories, even though the history, like for my own family, is so far removed from my life, 4 or 5 generations back. I don't remember what it was like in the previous country. My family has been here for so many generations that we're just fully assimilated. But I wonder um, what's what are the lessons that you took away from this book and just from your immigrant experience for Asian Americans or just broadly um, being a person whose immigrant experience is so much closer to the surface than my own family.
It's the two words I want to take away from this book. One is most time if we think that this society give us or this country give us some very good living style and condition. And most time it's we just take a liberty or equity on that one side, and we try to looking for more or right, go through the legal system or go through the political system, try to fight for our right and try to the reduce discrimination. But on the other side, I always try to learn from this book and from all my friends. We are if we are be the one of a member of this country or society, we need to do something in return because it's compared with every almost every single immigrant, unless they are super rich, they become an investor in this country. Most immigrant they have a economic difference. They are less rich or is the in the poverty in their motherland and coming here becoming better life and have a better opportunity. But most time it's the we still need to contribute to this country, becoming one of us, the member of a society, just contribute a little bit more. Even we struggling to for our life to make a living, but in the spare time, we always can do something for the community work, to do some volunteers work. That's going to give you more sense of a host, or is you becoming one of a society's member. Mm-hmm. And then I think most time, if you associate with good people, you're much happier. That's the my feeling too. Even sometimes it's a stranger, but when good heart people getting together, you can see through their eyes and see even we look different, but when we do good things together, you feel so enjoy of your life. That's the I took from this book.
I loved what you said about becoming a host in this country. I'm from the South, so obviously hospitality is such a huge thing. And I think that's a really, really beautiful way to think about immigration to the US, that we're kind of always trying to welcome, hopefully, even though there's kind of always been, even in the history, that strand of people who are more skeptical of immigration. And I think that will probably always be there. But I love that idea of America welcoming. That dovetails really nicely with something that I wanted to do at the end of this episode, because I was a literature major. So I wanted to bring in a poem today to read, because it's just sort of iconic, again, really associated with the Statue of Liberty and all of those things that are like very representative of America as a country of immigrants. So it's a bit cliche, but I wanted to read Emma Lazarus's poem, The New Colossus, which some famous lines you might recognize are printed, or I guess etched, on the base of the Statue of Liberty. So not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land, here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. And of course, the most like famous part of that, give me your tired, your poor, yearning to breathe free, were written by a Jewish American woman whose family immigrated from Germany. And the poem was actually written as part of a fundraiser for the Statue of Liberty. And so I love that image of America being the mother of exiles and welcoming the homeless and the struggling in.
I like Statue of Liberty. Is whenever I visit New York City, I always stop by there and just see the Statue of Liberty cross the Hudson River, and then I just feel, oh my God, so lucky I am. I'm becoming American here, and also this book is, I think we just share just a tiny part of this book, and if people have a chance to read it, they can read it, they can enjoy it. I tend to read a book with a map. So it's whenever the book is talking about a particular place, I'm trying to Google that place, and then you can see all the vivid pictures, and then you can connect the visual image with the word described. So it's a description. That's the kind of things that I want the people, especially for the Asian American, and if they have any chance, if they don't read the book, they can listen to the audiobook or read even some book review and the authors talk about this one. I almost cover every single episode is on the YouTube about this book. I love every time when I listen. It's so exciting. Thank you, Katie.
Oh, thanks. To close things out, finally today, we've had a good conversation, but I wanted to introduce a new segment for the show. As we are finishing up this pandemic year, we know it's been really hard for everyone, and we've had to find ways to entertain ourselves at home. So I thought it'd be fun each week if we talked about what we've been reading or watching or listening to, streaming, movies, TV, books, podcasts, music, whatever's getting you through the whatever level of quarantine you are in your state or city or wherever you live. So Don, what's keeping you entertained this week?
Sorry, I didn't prepare with your question, but this week I just keep watch the episode, the TV series. It's called the Man Hunting. It's talking about it's kind of one person is a security guard. It used to be described as the loser, and then he was framed by the FBI. And then it's the local ATF guy to help to find the real murderer, who is the real murderer. And then it's on the one side got clear his name. On the other side, they catch the real bomber. That's kind of a pretty intense. Keep me awake and try to finish another one. It's so exciting. That's kind of the TV series that's for my entertainment.
I love it. I love the detective shows. This week, so getting up in the morning, especially in these winter months, is such a struggle. So this week, I've really been in the morning enjoying a series from the podcast that I listen to called The Happiness Lab, which is hosted by Yale professor Dr. Laurie Santos. And she teaches a class at Yale that's like their most popular class ever called The Psychology of Happiness. And earlier this fall, she did a series for her podcast called Happiness Lessons from the Ancients, where she interviews different professors and experts going through some of the lessons that ancient philosophers from like Aristotle to the Buddha kind of took about happiness and well-being and how they line up with the modern psychology and cognitive science about happiness. And I'm finding these tips really helpful, definitely, as we struggle through working from home and finding motivation despite the monotony of the day-to-day this year. So you should definitely check it out if you're having a rough time getting out of bed in the morning.
I think you always have a smiling face and the magnetic, the voice, and you don't need to seek happiness. You are happy already. And let's find some challenge next time.
Well, we'll wrap it up there for this week. Don, thanks so much for talking with me.
Thank you, audience. If you like it, just click a like button.
Yeah. And thank you so much, of course, to our audience for listening to the Asian American Forward podcast. I'm your co-host, Katie Simpson. If you enjoyed the show this week, or if you didn't, send us your comments at info@asianamericanforward.com. We would love to hear from you, or drop us a note if you have a topic that you'd be interested in hearing us discuss. You can also find us on Facebook. And if you want to hear more conversations between Don and I, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. If you're a fan of the show, leave us a review in the Apple Podcast store or tell someone about us. We'll talk to you next week.